Welcome on in, everybody. I'm Teddy Ninja.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Blayde.
And we're talking Snap. This is episode 1 of Talking Snap. I am super excited to be bringing this episode to you guys. We have a banger here. We got balance changes, shaking up the meta. How can you adapt your decks to still be able to climb up to infinite? We also have a brand new headline card, Daredevil, looking like he's going to make a serious splash in the meta. Blayde, what are you excited about?
For me, the thing I'm most excited about is kind of the smoothing out of the curve of discard. Obviously, Hellcow got nerfed a bit, but I like how they shuffled around some of the mana costs of the cards around discard to just kind of make the cards more intriguing to play throughout the game. I think that's what I'm most excited for.
Yes, I love it. Second dinner giveth and second dinner taketh away. But oh man, speaking of taketh away, Nakia is dead. The person who created her is fired. Give 2 cards in your hand plus 2 power. She used to be able to buff the entire hand. Blayde, I run Nakia in every single deck. What am I going to do?
You're going to replace her. That's
yes.
what you're going to do.
Yes.
Just a 3 for a max of 5, and you can't even guarantee what 2 cards you're going to hit with your plus 2 power. There's just a lot of times you could be better off running Forge now, and Forge isn't even a good card. I think Nakia has like no redeeming qualities left. I think she's just dead.
I agree. I feel like this Okoye went through the same phase of trying to rework her, but still she was too much in the meta. Here at Nakia, I think there are just better 3 costs. The power that you can get out of most 3 costs is way over 5 strength, right? And so even decks that want really targeted power onto a couple cards, like your Swarm, your Multiple Man, Human Torch, Deadpool. Like you said, if you play Forge or some other card that's going to be able to present a buff like Ironheart, Hulkbuster, these are going to be better options, right?
And honestly, like, even if Nakia went down to 2 energy, more playable, easier to swallow the change, but still probably not being run. That's what's crazy about where she is now.
Yes, this makes Okoye, the formerly ugly sister, look way better. Do I just run Okoye instead as a flex slot?
Definitely think it's worth giving a shot now, especially if you're in one of those decks where you want things in your hand to be buffed. I think Okoye is the only one that isn't a massive tempo loss and still represents at least a fair cost to power ratio at the end of the day.
Yeah, I agree. Also, if we're looking at like how you're adapting your decks, you're cutting Nakia out. If you're not running Scorpion, Scorpion is a god among these puny cards, hitting the entire opponent's hand with -1 power at 2/2 stat line. Like that's amazing. So if you were running Nakia but not Scorpion, run Scorpion now. Way better. I feel like also if you're looking for something to splash in as a flex slot, you can hit some control pieces. You could bring in a Killmonger. You could bring in a Cosmo. And these are cards that just generally apply to all decks as useful, kind of the way Nakia was. But if you were really relying on Nakia buffing a lot of pieces, it's going to feel like your deck got nerfed.
Yeah, and I think the Zoo decks continue to get hit hard by these changes. Those are the ones that can survive this the least. I think they're really struggling after this one.
Zoo and Sarah Miracle, right?
Yep.
And speaking of major nerfs, they just keep on coming with the Collector. Oh, my baby. This was actually my favorite card prior to the change. I can't say that he's lost being my favorite now just because they balanced him, but man, when a card enters your hand from anywhere except your deck, +1 power. This is cut in half. It used to be +2, and they give you the little slap in the face consolation prize of +1 power to his body. Oh no. Blayde, I run Collector in multiple archetypes. Which one of these survive?
So this comes down to your deck. If you were a Falcon bounce Collector deck, unfortunately I think your deck is now dead. Find something else to bounce is probably the advice there.
Yeah, and Beast is still good in a lot of archetypes. He doesn't have to play with Collector.
Collector can probably still survive in your discard deck. He will not hit, the teens to 20s in power level, but discard doesn't have a lot of things they want to do on turns 1, 2, 3 necessarily, mostly turns 1 and 2. So if you don't draw a Morbius, Collector, still fine. You could probably run Collector in Dino Moon Girl if you're still doing those kinds of shenanigans. It's just Collector needs to no longer be your win con and just benefit from whatever your actual win con is. If that can support Collector, toss him in. He's still going to be probably an above average 2-drop. Just the power ceiling for him plummeted. He went from like a high-rise apartment to like maybe a duplex.
Oh man, yeah, exactly right. Because if we look at the queen of efficiency in Angela, right, she becomes a 2/7. That's a great stat line. Collector can still compete with that, right? You have to create 6 new cards in hand. A Moon Girl is going to do that. Hitting Swarm or Apocalypse a couple times, depending on your variant, is still going to do that. But especially that Beast Bounce deck that needed like a 20 strength Collector on one lane to win. That's the one that got hurt. So for the players that are only in Pool 2, they had Kazoo and they had Collector. Kazoo got hurt pretty bad last time, and I felt like that made Collector the better starter deck. Do you think that this brings Kazoo back? Are they on parity? If you were only in Pool 2, or if you were giving a recommendation to someone in Pool 2, what deck would you tell them to build?
I honestly think we're kind of in the point where budget discard edges out the other two.
You know, that's very fair.
It's still kind of rough out in Pool 1 and 2 world, but I think budget discard is the way to go.
Budget discard is the new champ. Well, when we touch on some of these changes, we got extra power buffed onto Swordmaster, right? And that was one of the reasons that budget discard was so awkward. Now its energy curve is looking better. I think I'm with you on that one. I might start recommending that to the new players.
And obviously, like going 1-to-1 with a Pool 3 discard, you're probably not going to have it, but you don't need to have it. As a budget deck, you just need to have a good enough strategy and know what games you're in and what games you're not. And I think budget discard, you can be in enough games to at least go down swinging. Exactly.
Well, once they get peer-to-peer matchmaking, we'll have the showdown of the Pool 2 decks.
I'll have to start building some of those old ones.
This rolls us in real quick. We have Lizard here, 2 energy, now up to 5 strength instead of 4. Ongoing -3 power if your opponent has 4 cards here. I think this is just a buff to the bots. I don't think anybody's actually going to want to run this card, but it seems to be very popular with the AI decks.
I almost think he's almost able to be considered now.
You think so?
I mean, worst case scenario, him falling back to a 2/2 isn't terrible, as bad as a 2/1 is. I still think a 2/2 is probably still going to be a touch too weak to really push him.
Yep.
But I think that kind of these flood the board strategies have also been a hit enough, with like Nakia being hit to bring down Sarah. Might also bring down a bit of Swarm. Your opponent might be flooding the board less than usual, where you can get away with Lizard. I still don't think he makes the cut, but I think he's starting to push into that territory.
You know, that's fair. And there's a brand new deck that I saw hitting the tables just yesterday, which is it's an ongoing, but you run Wong plus you bring Spectrum back. And then the Spectrum Wong combo gives +4. So every single one of your cards has to be ongoing. And they're all these cheap ongoing cards, like Lizard. And so suddenly, him being a 2/6 at the worst cost if he's gotten +4 from Spectrum, that final turn swing is just enormous. Absolutely enormous. All right, moving on down the changes list. Let's hit Rescue here. She's kind of the odd one out, and then we have all the discard changes to talk about together. So Rescue used to be 5/5, now down to 4/4. Is she going to see any love? I have only seen Rescue hit the board when, what's the location? District X gives me a random deck. That's the only time I've played Rescue. Am I going to play her now, Blayde?
I've tried to run her before. Before she was just so bad.
Oh, yeah.
You can compare her now to things like Warpath. I've seen Warpath seeing more play. Would not call him common, but at least I'm seeing him attempted more often.
Do you only see him in the Destroyer, or do you see him in a couple other decks?
I've seen him in Destroyer decks. I've seen him in kind of like all-in Onslaught ongoing decks that are just like, I'm committing to these 2 locations. I don't care what you do.
Yeah.
I've seen him messed around in some kind of mid-rangey-ish strategies where they figure like if I have to bail and he becomes a 4/5, not the end of the world. So I think you'll see similar experimentation with rescue. I still think probably telegraphing your turn 5 play is enough of a hindrance where she won't make the cut. But a 4/9 is much more reasonable and much more competitive to where I think she'll see some experimentation, which is an improvement on, oh dang, I pulled rescue as my pool 3 card. What a dead pull.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Is there something there with Wong where Wong will give her +10? And because the Wong territory is usually one you are always going to want to pile on cards on top of anyway, like it's not as telegraphed, right? Because you've already telegraphed with Wong.
Yeah.
And
Wong
then you play
is the telegraph.
Yeah, and then you're playing a 4/14. Maybe at that point it's overkill. I don't know.
That also makes, I guess, the pain of if your follow-up after that is going to be a white tiger in some way, it's less bad.
Yep, just bouncing
But
to the outside.
just the curve of that becomes awkward because Wong and Rescue are both 4. So it would be like 4/5, and then White Tiger would be your 6, which is also clunky.
I don't
you
know.
Really want to sneak an Odin in there.
I don't know if it's strong enough. Because your alternative, right, is you just go straight to White Tiger and then play Odin on top of that. And then you get the 4 Spirit Tigers.
So you're getting 28 total power from that versus your +10 from Rescue. Because Odin on her the second time won't do anything.
Exactly. That's where it's dead. And I've been like, if you play Magik, I get an extra turn, but I don't have the energy or the time to be able to trigger Rescue again. I need to turn 8, Blayde. Are we going to get a second Magik that gives us a turn 8?
I hope not.
Well, Magik is suspiciously not on the list, but before we hit her, we have a slew of the entire energy curve of discard has been changed, right? So let's hit Hellcow first. Hellcow up from 2/6 to 4/6.
That one was shocking.
Yeah, is this the biggest adjustment they've done to a card?
I think mana-wise for sure, or energy-wise.
Well, I guess it's on par with what they did to Strong Guy, right?
Yeah, they gave Strong Guy a slight buff as well, though.
He did. He did get more power, and Hellcow has stayed the same. So it's just showing what this card was able to do. I pulled it just this morning. I got one block of games with the original Hellcow, and it was wonderful. Oh man, I think what happened was the developers were initially looking at this and they were like, yeah, so discarding is potentially a hindrance to the players. You're losing out on cards in hand, so we should give them premium stat lines. And then they realized that the engine cards they built for discard are actually just really good.
Yeah, and that logic is fair if discard wasn't its own archetype in the game.
Exactly.
And they knew it was going to be a thing. They have search filters for it.
Yeah.
I don't think maybe they anticipated the consistency at which you could make sure you're only hitting things you want to hit with this. I think that's where it kind of broke. Because nobody was playing Hellcow on turn 6. That was the problem. Or on turn 2, sorry.
Right, you didn't drop it on curve.
Yeah, so like if you did that, obviously the downside is potential there. You might hit your other discard card or something else. You were saving it for turn 5, turn 4, turn 5 to set up your turn 6. So,
or you were playing Invisible Woman and playing it after the game is ended. Basically,
that is also true.
Yeah.
So I think now it just kind of its energy cost reflects its actual use as well as its power. But yeah, 2 energy increase is a huge change.
So before we talk about what discard looks like now, we got to say Swordmaster has come down. He was 4 energy, 7 power. Now he's down to 3 energy, 6 power, which is great for him. And it's also what I like about this change is it's great for the budget discard deck that has not gotten into pool 3. It makes that deck feel a lot better because he was too expensive before. Mm-hmm. And then the final change that we have here, if I pull it up, I had it set. Well, we have Kingpin to talk about as our grand finale, but we also have Colleen Wing going to a 2/4. So she matches the stat line of Lady Sif, but she has the inverse effect. discarding the lowest cost card from your hand instead of the highest cost.
And I double love that, not just because discard's curve being changed to have more viable 1s and 2s is always good. I love parallels in card design, so having these two cards with the same stat line across the board with just inverse effects is really cool, and it also gives you that flexibility of it's turn 2, I drew Swarm, let me play Colleen, or I drew Apocalypse, let me play my Lady Sif, or maybe you don't run both, but it gives you that flexibility for targeted discard, and they are kind of dead even in power. I just like those kinds of parallels.
Yeah, I think it's great, and it really lets you, because the brain puzzle for discard is curating your hand. And so if you're going all in on Swarm, you bring in Colleen. If you like Apocalypse, Dracula kind of shenanigans, you go in with Lady Sif. And yeah, they're different tools for some very specific stuff. They get good work done. I think it makes Hela discard look much better. And the YouTube algorithm, guys, I'm trying to keep it PG, but we literally have Hellcow and Hela in the names of the cards. I'm going to talk about the cards. YouTube doesn't know what's happening. But I think that Hela discard is what they want to be a little bit more powerful. They're going in that direction. And so if you're not running it, if you're still sticking with Apocalypse, you bring Swarm. And then I still like Hellcow. I actually do still like Hellcow with the double discard. And then it just makes Moon Knight and Gambit look even better to me, really. Colleen Wing coming in. I don't know. I still probably run Lady Sif actually over Colleen Wing. I don't know. Because Collector got the nerf, I probably favor Lady Sif for this specific list that I have on screen right now. But I might cut Lady Sif actually if I draw into Gambit. If I draw into my my Moon Knight. Still waiting for those big boys.
And I actually think there's a world where potentially the list comes out, or like the average list comes out not looking too much different.
Yeah.
Just because all of the key cards are staying the same.
Right.
I think maybe where you're going to see a hit is potentially to some late game consistency, since you can't as easily combo Hellcow with multiple other cards on turn 4 and 5. So you might see the average power level of the deck drop, but I still think the lists might stay pretty consistent.
Yeah, I think they got enough back in the energy cost coming down of these other pieces that it gives you a little bit more, because before your list was really locked in. You ran Hellcow and it was edging out, even considering some of these other cards. And so now you get to run your own spicy variant for like how you've decided you can optimize the list. And I like that.
Yeah, I think you definitely have at least, 2-3 flex spots for, do you want to go more Wong? Do you want to go more Dracula? Do you want to, maybe you even try and drop in a Koye now to try and hit your Swarm that way. I think you've got some flex spots to mess around with for either meta calls or just whatever vibes with your playstyle the best.
Nice. I totally agree. We've got one final balance change here. So I guess we'll do a double check just to make sure that we hit everything. But we've got Kingpin. Kingpin, I've not seen him. I've seen him a little more than Rescue, but that was only because the Bifrost was a popular location a little while ago. He has the exact same stat line, but his ability has been updated. Old ability on reveal, next turn destroy cards that move here. New ability on turn 6, destroy cards that move here. What do you think about this?
It's a bit interesting in a couple different ways. One, the main, the obvious thing is if you're playing against a move deck, this just nukes the Heimdall play.
Goodbye, Heimdall. I didn't know that Kingpin was the canonical adversary to Heimdall, but I'm all for this comic line.
So I think you see move decks potentially running something like Chavez now, just to have a backup plan.
So if they see Kingpin, they can... Yeah, okay.
I like it because I tried the Kingpin Arrow combos or Kingpin Magneto combos.
Yeah. Magneto has to be the best one, right?
Yeah. Magneto's just the best in general, and he's the coolest. It's just tough because you played Kingpin and your opponent was like, okay, I'm just going to play my cards opposite Kingpin this turn.
Exactly.
And then that whole combo got ruined. And while they still can just kind of dump everything into Kingpin's lane, that also means your 3 energy card forced your opponent to overcommit to a location.
Yeah.
So while you can still play around it, it's much more disruptive to your opponent to play around it. So I like the change. It's still awkward. It's a little bit clunky. It probably feels really bad for move decks, but I still don't know how well it's going to work out in practice.
Yeah, whenever move takes over the meta with whatever new card they get, Kingpin's going to be there in the wings as the counter tech. But this change, it does make it more consistent. It lets you set him up early and then draw into the card to combo with him later. So I see it as a buff. I do see it as a buff, but I don't see it as going to make a splash in the meta, really. That's all of the balance changes that we have covered. Let us know down in the comments what you guys thought of this patch. Did the developers change enough? Did they not change enough? Let us know. What are the cards that you think still need to be tweaked? Especially I'm interested in the cards you guys would like to see buffed to bring them up, because the developers keep on nerfing stuff. That's what everybody wants to talk about. I want to know, what are the sleepers that you guys want to see rise up in the meta? All right, so now we've got a couple very noticeable omissions, and I think that will segue into where we think the meta is going to stand overall. Some decks that were already at the top didn't get touched. Some have gotten a step and a half taken back. So where's Magik on this change list? I've heard a lot on the Discord about people saying she's the best card in the game. Was this true? Is she gonna just reign supreme?
I think Magik is one of those cards where even if you have the data that she's too good, it's a really hard change to make, because if you nerf her to 6 cost, it doesn't really change why she's strong at all. So that leaves you with a mechanical change, which is a much larger change and not one that you can just kind of do in a snap. No pun intended.
Yeah, it takes you into the rework territory.
So I think she's just going to be super awkward to change. And I would like to see her change just because I think she kind of plays opposite to how the game is designed to play. But I can see where they're going to try to avoid doing that if they don't have to.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up coming of her. It means that, the Sarah Miracle that was reigning supreme for a while has already been slowing down. And then now with Nakia, what was a key card for them, also getting hit. They're hurting. Hellcow was big for Sarah buff Miracle. So I feel like this is kind of relegating her to like C tier on the meta list, but I don't have the most definite meta list of the different decks. So if we look at how the decks lie in terms of what's powerful, what got hit by the changes, Deathwave already arguably the best archetype. No changes hitting it whatsoever. I feel like it just keeps on running the table.
And every time we've had one of these patches, Deathwave has kind of come out a little bit stronger as a result.
Yeah.
Just in comparison to the rest of the meta. And I feel like if we weren't already at breaking territory, we're like right there now. There's not a ton of cards or decks that can really go toe to toe with Deathwave unless you've got like all of pool 3 at your disposal.
Exactly. You get the splash of control, you get really good energy efficiency, you can counter some of the awkward pieces like the hobgoblins, the green goblins, even the locations like Central Park that will choke up other people's boards. If you're chewing through them with Carnage, it's just very consistent and it hits the opponent. It hits like the sweet spot of control against the opponent, power on the board. If you can play Deathwave, that's like your surefire climb to infinite, I feel like. The other big winner, I feel like, in terms of archetype wise, is control because of Daredevil. Shall we look at our new premier card here?
Yeah,
now,
Daredevil is a doozy.
Oh, he's so nice. Ben Brode told me in a video that Guardians of the Galaxy are alive and well with Daredevil. Is this where he's actually going to live?
I think he's going to live in a ton of places.
Okay.
You've got the obvious uses with Guardians. You've got some of the other more obvious uses with things like using Daredevil to set up where I want to play my Professor X.
Yes, the control synergy.
Kind of stuff. Control is going to be great. But I think Daredevil's one of those cards that the better you are as a player, the better Daredevil is going to be. And I expect many or most of the best players in the game, now when I say that, I mean players that are not me, way better than myself, are going to want this card changed. Or because I feel like high-ranking matchups between top players, it's going to be like who draws Daredevil, or like we all have to run Daredevil, because if you have two Daredevils down, they cancel each other out.
Right.
Just because even forgetting all of the combos with like Professor X, Spider-Man, whatever, forgetting all of that, the amount of knowledge and information you're getting based on what your opponent played and where on turn 5, setting up your own turn 5 and then the pivotal turn 6, good players are going to be able to pounce on that information and just strangle you out of games.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be obnoxious.
Especially if you're in a competitive environment that really comes into when you snap, when you retreat, getting the information about, okay, they did have this combo. I should retreat now before I'm losing more cubes in the match. Or this is where I double down. I get the snap off to be able, even though it's going to force a retreat on my opponent, I get the extra cube. Yeah, there's so much going on here.
And just the fear factor of like, if you have Daredevil down, I play my turn 5 card, and you snap, even if I'm confident in my play,
yes,
now I'm not confident anymore.
Yes.
Even if you have nothing, I'm going to be like, they know what I have, and they said they don't care and snapped anyway.
Exactly.
I'm terrified now.
Yeah. Yeah, so I feel like this could maybe do what Wave has done and worked her way into so many different places in the meta, but especially Control. I think that Daredevil is also going to be very broad use, and especially Control loves knowing what turn 5 is. Hobgoblin, yeah, I got a free zone to sail over into. Or you hold it and you play Professor X instead. Like, it's just so good.
I actually think Daredevil will be probably more played than Wave and Thor combined, is my hot take.
Oh, man.
Wave was
all right.
super cool and created some brand new decks that were not possible before, but Wave does not fit into every single type of deck. You can make an argument to throw Daredevil in anything right now.
That's true. It's true. I think you just gave us a title or a subtitle for the episode right there. Well, when we check back in, we'll see how this came out. But I only saw Thor played twice, so it's mostly if he's bigger than Wave.
Thor isn't bringing a lot to the table.
Yep. But when he's bigger than Wave, we will see. We will see. I'm very excited for what this card works into. I think he is great. So is your favorite Daredevil deck with like a control variant? You're running Professor X, you're running Hobgoblin?
I've done that a little bit. Believe it or not, what I've been using him most in is just kind of like a mid-rangey, like play big stuff down.
Okay.
And that deck is running things like Red Skull. So being able to see where the optimal spot for my Red Skull is if I can't zero him is kind of really handy.
Yep.
And it's not even the best deck for him. Just like decks like that, getting that kind of information makes even like off meta or meme decks that much stronger because you really get to optimize your move.
You know, I'm coming around to how you're seeing this because I have Scorpion fit into so many of my decks as just a flex spot, and he's a 2/2 just debuffing the opponent's hand. Well, maybe instead of debuffing the opponent's hand, I get to see their turn 5. That does sound better to me. He's immediate candidate for any open flex slot you have, especially because he's this proactive turn 2 play, which, yeah,
and a
very
2/2
desirable.
Is like, fine. A lot of decks are skipping turn 2, so getting 2 power on the board, not too bad.
Yeah, you didn't give up really anything in terms of like the power to energy ratio for this really pivotal ability.
So do you have anything else in mind for him? Did you have any other decks that you were planning on slotting him into?
Ooh, for Daredevil, I mean, I want to give Guardians of the Galaxy a try. And beyond that, it's... Okay, so what it is, and it's probably not good, but here's my deck. You have to play...
For the record, anytime you start with it's not going to be good, I'm already in. Those are my kinds of decks.
I want to play a deck where I could potentially play Leader on turn 5, knowing their info. But I have to play Sarah on turn 5 instead.
Or Wave on 4.
I can play Wave on 4. There it is. That's what it is. You have Daredevil, Wave, Leader.
Or Psylocke too, I guess.
Yep, Psylocke. Any energy cheat to be able to have Leader as a contender. You see what their turn 5 is, and then you figure out if you bring in the leader or not. That's the game.
Is your turn 5 good enough where I want to steal it? Or
Yeah.
was your turn 5 bad where my turn 5 is better?
Exactly. And then I wait for the leader for turn 6, or I have some other option in hand. And also sometimes just the positioning of leader, which lane did I want to put him in so that I'm not clogging up one of your plays. That's what I'm looking at. The big brains, Daredevil plus leader, I like it.
And honestly, even the Guardians, like, even if it's not good, it's the kind of thing where, like, I'm going to play it a bunch because it seems like a ton of fun, and I don't care what happens.
It does. It does seem very fun. I just want to hear the Star-Lord got him over and over, right?
Yeah.
That is going to do it for episode 1 of Talking Snap. If you guys enjoyed the conversation here with Blayde, covering the game news, everything near and dear to the Marvel Snap community, subscribe to the channel. We're going to be doing more of these episodes. It's been a ton of fun to cover these things. And also, you can check out down in the description Blayde's YouTube. He's covering a ton of awesome stuff over on your channel. What do you have coming up for people, Blayde?
Yeah, we have a lot of discussion content, kind of similar to this, in more bite-sized packages. If you need some short form content, started a new series over there called Wheel of Snap, starting with a deck of all basic and recruit season cards, and building our deck based on random wheel spins from there. That's a lot of fun. Check it out if you're into stuff like that.
Man, I love that idea, and beautiful thumbnails over on your channel, may I say. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a blast talking these changes, and going to be looking forward to what we get in the future.
Yep, can't wait for the next one.
All right, thank you guys for watching. Till next time, have a good one.